So hello guys, I will be finishing with the warehouse presentation. As you may know by now, my group is Vanessa, Nati, and Liana. And I'm going to explore and talk about brand failures, of course in the context of the warehouse. Next one please. And what are the brand failures that probably the warehouse most avoid when they're branding their products? Next one please. So to start with, there's always to acknowledge that brand failures is something that is there, and every company is at risk to experience it. We can level the brand failures as general at the beginning, and they actually have branches in ideas, extensions, and culture. Next one, please. So failures overall can be this one. So a company can experience deception, can also experience lack of change. Deception, for instance, is when a company uses information that is not completely worthy or trustful. And as a result, when the customers or clients discover that the company is lying, they will lose the trust in them. The lack of change, which is not changing according to the times and the circumstances that is they're going through. Brand ego is they base too much on the previous success, and eventually they grow in ego, and they don't recognize the circumstances and they may collapse. Brand paranoia as well, when they have competition, and they just get nuts because of the presence of the competitors, and they don't maintain the market share. And the Icarus paradox, it's when they have an outstanding performance and they suffer from overconfidence. And the last one, position amnesia, is when they forget who they are and they start mixing their basics, their essence, the values, everything. And eventually they become something that it's not who they are. Next one, please. So the warehouse in New Zealand, it probably, according to the previous failures, it might be possible, that they suffer from two. As my classmates talk and explore, the warehouse is the #1 company retail here in New Zealand. And because they're #1, they probably have amnesia, and they could forget who they are, and they start mixing their identity, values, pricing strategy, marketing, all. And because of overconfidence, they also may fail. They won't recognize what they have in the market, competitors, other strategies that the companies are using, and they may fail as well. Next one, please. So we think, probably in the case of the warehouse, the previous one are the most likely to be suffered by them. Next one, please. And now we have the first of the three categories of the failures. The first one is idea. Next one, please. So to be specific, some of the failures that a company can experience are connected or linked to specifically ideas. So when we don't understand, when we started this one, we try to understand that the company is failing at understanding the needs and the wants, and they're not addressing it properly, and that's why they start having problems. They don't offer accurate solutions, and they fail. Next one, please. So in the case of the warehouse, according to all the information that we studied, collected, see about them on the internet, we found different things. So in this case, most of the clients that they have, they're buying on site, but if we check, the highest percentage of buyers and clients are it's a group below 40 years old. So even when they have a significant percentage that is not buying online and they're buying on a store, when we check the clients and they're below 40, That means this is a considerable percentage that is constantly using social media, and they constantly getting information of the company about social media or the internet. So this is something that the warehouse may need to understand and adjust itself a little bit, because if people, and if especially the customers, are spending 2 or 3 hours or even more than that on the internet, they probably need to address, as my classmate mentioned before, they need to address better, and they need to adjust to this idea of how the market, the clients, and the customers are changing in order to not fail and not to lose the number one position in the market. Next one, please. So it might be the warehouse need to be more present and need to boost the strategies to not lose the market share. And finally, they need to all be more reliable and accurate on the information they're posting, because the rating is not that good. So we could see on the website and the different of the apps, for example, that they contain is usually not good, not well rated. So from 5.3 or 4, it could be better. It could always improve. Next one, please. So now we can move on to the extension failures. So extension failures, next one, please. It's when a company, of course, trying to broaden their horizon, and they try to extend themselves, and they try to explore new fields for the company. But companies need to be really careful when they're doing this, because if they lose the focus, they can just be not faithful to their values, lose their identity, just lose in that path. So in the case of the warehouse, we think, or it is thought, that these failures do not apply since the company has not attempted to extend to new sectors. For instance, this could happen if the warehouse tried to sell cars, which they're not doing. Next one. Cultural failures. And these failures, next one please, it's when a brand fail to not understand the cultural environment present in the market. Culture is alive, it's breathing, it's compounded by feelings, thoughts, emotions, ways, habits, behaviors. So a brand also needs to understand what the culture is, and they could address well or fail in addressing it. So in this case, in the case of the warehouse, keeping in mind of the complexity of the culture, always they need to do some research in terms to understand, and they will give a better approach. So in the case of the warehouse, they have understood really well the contents of the Kiwi people here in New Zealand. As we mentioned, there are Kiwi-based and Kiwi-owned company. So they understand the cultural context. Just to give one example, they understand that, for instance, what are the sports that the Kiwi people do, and they will provide, or summer, so they will provide elements or clothes according to every season and according to the needs that the Kiwi people need in each season of the year. Next one. And lastly, we're going to explore the impact of globalization, focus, of course, on the warehouse. Next one, please. So, as we mentioned before, the warehouse is a nationwide company. And if they, in the case, they decide to pursue a position that takes them globally, there are a few steps that need to be considered. But now we have to say this is an hypothetical situation, because nowadays they're just nationwide. Next one, please. So the first thing is we need to understand the behavior of the possible areas where they want to extend, the culture, the economic habits, how much is the income, how much they can buy, if they have seasons or not. They need to understand the whole environment. The consuming patterns, for example, of the country where they want to extend. also, as I mentioned, so for example, in New Zealand, they will sell things according to the season of the year. Now we're in winter, so they will be selling blankets, warm clothes, to make people more uncomfortable. So if they go to a new country, they will need to acknowledge if, for example, they have seasons in order to be more accurate in terms of message, strategies, prices as well. They need to be acknowledging that step. Next one, please. So, in that sense, in order to communicate their essence, the value proposition, the ideas, also they need to understand the competitors in the market, because that's something that cannot be avoided. It's not just understanding what's inside of the environment, but also who is playing in that environment, so they can combine everything to their favor. That will be all. Thank you so much, guys.
Okay. Just two quick questions for you. The first question, please. You have presented three, actually, the general failures, idea failures, extension failures, and cultural failures. From your research, which of these do you think is a major problem to Warehouse based on the level of success they have achieved from 1982 to date?
As I mentioned, I think the general failures are the one that apply the most to them, because extension, they haven't extended to any place. Cultural failures, they don't, in our perception, they're not presenting it because they're our own and based Kiwi company. So they have succeed in understanding the culture here in New Zealand. So we think they may lack of confidence, maybe, and amnesia. They could forget who they are just to bring something new to the market, but they could forget their values, who they are, their identity. And of course, overconfidence, because, we are number one, so we can do whatever we want, and it's not okay for our company to do that. So we think probably the general failures are the most at risk they are at the moment.
Okay. Based on the research, can you tell us one thing you have learned from BM703?
Yes. Well, in this case, in the project, I think be more analytical. It was one of the themes. Acknowledging the context and the environment, and being immersed in that context just to identify, analyze, and be more critical in that environment. I think that would be one of the takeaways.
Not their takeaways, your takeaway.
My takeaway. That's my takeaway.
Okay.